to another episode of Always Making. Thanks for joining us here in the studio again. We have another great guest, Buttars, or Chalese. I got it right. I got it. Yeah, perfect. Awesome.
Nice job.
Thanks for being here in the studio with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are going to get into conversation about everything awesome that she is making and creating. But before we do, guys, go check out what we're doing on our YouTube channel. There's some new tutorial videos out if you guys haven't seen them yet. We actually have a button tutorial out on the YouTube
that's
channel.
Right. Perfect
you can
timing.
go see how to make buttons yourself. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Tell us everything about the art world for you guys down in the comment section. It helps the show. We're also trying something new a little bit with Juniper here. So she is awake on this episode.
Yeah, she's been finding naps lately, so we'll see how this goes. She's awake.
So
you have anything to add? No? Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Chalese, for joining us in the studio today. We've seen your stuff at Craft Lake City. We've had a few friends at, I think it was Flaming Homers, got something from you at the holiday market.
Yeah, the Avenues.
Oh,
so
the Avenues.
Right
okay, it was the Avenue show.
Yes.
But your stuff is very awesome, and you really show what you can do with a button. Let's get started by talking about who you are, what you do, what you create, and how you got started with this whole creative journey of yours.
Sure. So it was kind of random. It was actually a COVID project. So I am not very artsy. I can't really draw. I can't paint.
To say you're not artsy, that's
no,
a
but
lie.
I mean, in my head, right? Like I took, a class in high school, like an art class. And I remember just sitting there trying to draw this still porcelain chicken or whatever it was, and this girl next to me was beautiful, and you look at mine, I'm like, what is this even? It doesn't even look like a chicken. So in that form of art, I've never viewed myself as that. I've been able to grow up playing the piano and that kind of thing, but art in the art painting kind of drawing form, it's never been a thing. So I over COVID was randomly looking at AliExpress, and on AliExpress they have some kind of weird scrapbooking things that come in these cute little booklets, and I for whatever reason loved them, and I ordered a bunch of them, and they were just sitting there, and I was talking to my friend Ange, and I was like, I love these things, but I don't know what to do with them. I have no idea. I want to make cool collages, but my brain wasn't coming up with them. And she's like, you should totally make buttons. And I thought, that's a great idea. Why not? Buttons are cool. People like buttons. I like buttons. Why not? So I bought a button maker right then on Amazon, and I just started kind of trying to make buttons with them, but they weren't turning out how I wanted them to. So I kind of thought, what if I use flowers to make buttons and make them into designs? So we're spending a lot of time outside because it was COVID. And so I went and picked, leaves off the ground and all these sorts of things, kind of just went foraging and dried them. And I started making buttons with them.
Yeah, the first stuff on your social media is very floral and what looks like a flower in a button. But then you got into some really cool stuff. I think one of my favorite ones I saw is the Campbell's soup and the detail on the Campbell's tomato soup. And what you guys don't realize is we're talking a button size here. So what size button are you using?
Yeah, so I have a number of different sizes because we were talking earlier about KSL, and I have gone on there a bunch of times, and I just bought up all the button makers that I can. So I've got a ton of them. What am I going to do with them? I don't even know. But some of them are 1 inch, and it's harder to do the more detailed stuff with that, obviously. But then I have the 1.25 inch and then the 2.25 inch, and that's the one that the Campbell's soup one is on, because I can do a little more detail. But yeah, they're pretty small.
That's 2 inches, just under 2 inches, probably about what that Campbell's soup is, and then filling in the full size of the button.
Yeah, totally.
Where did the inspiration go from leaving just the floral design stuff into the full gambit of what you do now?
I think it started out as, okay, I've picked up this little flower and now I'm going to put it on here and arrange it. But then as I started picking up leaves and other things as well, if you came to my house in my living room, I just have this, white foldable table from Costco or wherever it's from. And it is full of leaves and flowers that I've picked up. It's 1 inch thick, just full of it. And so I have a bunch of colors. And I thought one day, I think it was probably the World or Pac-Man that I started with. And I'm like, I could probably actually take these and then make them like into a design that people would actually know and kind of have maybe some nostalgia for. And so I started with that and I was like, this is pretty cool. And it's actually fun to see a tiny creation made with leaves and flowers. And so I ran with it.
So every single button you've made is, or I would say that you have in your Instagram, is all from forage, leaves, flowers, everything of that nature?
Yeah, so the majority of them are forage. Sometimes there are colors that are like really hard for me to get around here.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I'll buy a few like on Amazon or wherever to get certain colors. But like 98% of the stuff that I use is actually foraged from around here.
From local.
Yeah, or I actually used to travel for my work. I'm an audiologist and I work for
Okay, what is
yes,
that?
Yeah. So an audiologist is somebody that works with like hearing and balance and that kind of thing. So I am more on the hearing side. So I work for a hearing aid company.
Oh, okay.
And so for that hearing aid company, I was a traveling trainer for about 4 years. And so my majority of my territory was California and Arizona and Hawaii and Nevada. And so when I would travel, I would see
foliage from all those areas.
Yes. Yeah. Some way cool leaves. And it was like, winter time and I wasn't getting anything from here, but I could go to California and find some cool stuff. So I was always taking it around like a book with me, or even I keep a hard copy planner. Don't judge me, but I keep a hard copy planner and I would put stuff in there as well.
So let's talk about the process. So it starts with you foraging leaves. Then what happens from that point?
So then I have to come up with ideas. So I'll see something on like social media, or maybe I'm driving down the road and I'm like, oh, that would be like a cool button or frame. Since I've gotten into frames as well, we can talk about that later. But I'll see something and I'll kind of keep a list of ideas. And then I'll typically kind of print out a design and then take that and use like a straight razor essentially to cut out the detail. And so sometimes some of the things that I'm working with are like teeny tiny like eyeballs or noses or
very small stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Now what's interesting about it that you wouldn't really know if you don't work with like leaves and flowers is the composition of them can be so different. And so there are certain like flowers or leaves that I know are easier to work with that like they don't crumble, basically. And so if I have to cut something really small out, I'll usually do it with one of those things that I know is going to actually work for me.
And holds its shape. And
exactly. Yeah.
So you talk about the button presses and taking every single one of them off of KSL that you can.
Yes.
What other tools are you utilizing to create your masterpieces?
So, I mean, the flowers and leaves obviously are the biggest one, but kind of I don't know if it's called a straight razor. It's got like a blade, like a triangle blade that I'll use to basically cut everything.
So like an X-Acto knife?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
An X-Acto knife. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of my own tools. An X-Acto knife. So I'll use that to cut everything out. And then I do have to glue them on. So when I started with the buttons, I wasn't gluing them. And as you know, probably when you use that top Mylar piece, especially in Utah where it's like very dry, I think we get more static.
Yeah.
And so I would have like work for 2 hours on something. And then I'd have this design. I'm like, it's perfect. It's beautiful. And I put it in there. And I even had this strategy of like taking a wet cloth and kind of wetting the Mylar just a little bit and then putting it on there. But sometimes it wasn't effective. So it was like after you work for 2 hours and you put it on and then all of a sudden the pieces are like, poof, and then it was devastating basically. So I use a glue that's like more of a natural or organic glue so it doesn't change the color of the stuff that I'm working with.
Okay. So razor blade, forage leaves and flowers, some glue, and a button press.
Yes. And then my frames too that I've kind of started to get into are ones that I have to buy, but those tiny little frames as well.
And so the little tiny gold frames, you guys can see them on the social media. Let's throw that social media handle out real quick. What is that?
Butters_buttons.
Okay. And we'll throw it out at the end of the episode also, but if you guys are tuning in now and want to go take a look at what we're talking about, go check it out. Frames, when did that get started for you?
It was probably closer to the end of last year, middle of last year. Again, I was on the internet just looking at things that were available and I saw these cool little frames they almost could be passed as ornaments. I don't think they're necessarily meant to be like that, but I thought, hey, it would be cool to branch out into this. And it mainly came up because when I did a few of the like festivals, the art fairs, people would come up and they'd be like, I just don't know what to do with a button.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, I don't have anything to put a button on. I don't know what to do with a button. And I thought, I can totally get that. You know, not everybody knows what to do with a button.
Yeah.
So that's why I branched out into those.
Yeah, and it's very cool. We have one, you brought us one that we're going to be putting on our wall. It'll be on the wall in future videos that you guys can check that out. But where... Okay, there's so many questions I have because it's such an interesting technique. It's not something you see a lot out there, especially being so small. Let's you talked about the markets. Let's talk about what was the first thought process in saying, hey, I'm going to go try and sell these now.
So honestly, it was just, I started mainly doing it. It was never meant to be a business. And
Okay.
I've listened to a number of your podcasts, and that's kind of what a lot of people say, that it was never really meant to be a business. It was just kind of like something that they did for fun. And then, people asked them about it. I was listening to the Trash Pile episode,
Yeah.
And she said people just started asking her about it and it turned into something awesome. So that's how it started for me. I just started making them, and I was really doing it to kind of post on my Instagram because I just thought it was fun to make it and to share. And then I ended up having like literally hundreds of buttons.
There's hundreds of buttons on
Hundreds
Instagram.
of buttons. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all these buttons,
You can only fit so much on a backpack or on a vest or a hat or something. Yeah.
Yes. So I was like, what am I going to do with all of these? And I just thought, well, I might as well, try to sell them. It's really not like it's not a big business for me. Like that's still not why I'm doing it. It's more just meant to be fun.
Yeah.
And I think you and Christy talked about it. When you're at art fairs, it's literally just fun to have somebody come in and be like, that's pretty cool.
The reaction you get.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't care if they don't buy anything. If I didn't sell anything, that's totally fine. It's just the fact that it's like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, how do you do this? And if I can then convince people to get a button maker, I'm not selling them. It's not about that. But it's like, you can go get this on Amazon, or you can watch KSL, as well, or whatever Facebook Marketplace. And you can get this and then do it yourself. And it's super easy. You can do it with your grandkids. Like, it is just fun to make a button.
It's funny that you say the KSL because I was like, I just saw a button maker on there that was square buttons.
Oh,
and I was like, do we need a square button maker, Christy? And she goes, no, I don't think we need a square button maker. I'm like, okay, I know we have all these other projects. Maybe we don't need a square button maker at this
I
moment.
need a square button maker.
Have you seen the heart button makers?
I've seen those. Those are pretty cool,
We saw
too.
those the other day, and we're like, oh, that'd be kind of cool, too. Oh, okay,
Yes.
maybe future investment into button
Yes,
making.
yes. The square button, though, I like that idea.
The square one's pretty interesting looking. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. What was your first show experience like for you?
So that's first where I met you guys, I think. So it was the Mount Market.
Okay, the Mount
Market.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was my first one. I mean, they reached out to me on Instagram. I think they were just getting started and they were looking for people.
Yeah,
and
same
I was
for
like,
us. Yeah, they reached out to us and said, hey, you guys want to do this? We're like, oh, we'll give it a shot.
yeah, totally. So it was the first one I think they did. It was in a little church
Yeah.
in Salt Lake. And so I did that. I had just a table full of buttons, basically. I think I put them on a tablecloth. I pinned them on, and it was just fun to have people kind of walk up and to meet other people like you and Christy was also fun, for me. So that was my first experience. And then I did the Logan Art Festival up in Cache Valley because that's where I'm from.
Okay.
Shout out to Cache Valley. Shout out to Lewiston specifically. But I did that. It was like a 3-day festival up there. And so, which was also kind of fun to see a lot of the local people that I know.
How was the experience from a 1-day, couple-hour event to a 3-day event? Yeah.
It was a lot. I mean, it's a lot to sit there for kind of all day and have people come up and, be jolly, especially when it's hot. Luckily this year it wasn't too bad, but it's definitely very different from like a 1-day or even a 4-hour like the Mountain Market one was.
So just to update you, Christy, we talked about the tools. We talked about
Awesome.
the button process and the foraging of the leaves, and
Love it.
we're getting into the market side of things a little bit. We got Juniper back down, and so we'll see how this goes again for us. But
Thank you for being patient.
Absolutely. She's sleeping well right now. So.
Yeah.
so I know you had some questions, Christy. We continue the conversation and you jump in, or do you have a question right now you want to catch back up
I will
with?
jump in. I want to figure out where you guys are, and then I will jump in.
Okay,
Absolutely.
no problem. All right, so 3-day
repeat
market, bigger experience. What were some of the differences that you kind of felt besides the heat and like all the other stuff there?
It's just kind of like, you know, packing up for the night. It's like, it's not done. You know, we've got another day of it tomorrow. And so I think that was the interesting thing for me. I had done the Mount Market maybe once or twice. And then, I mean, it's only 4 or 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then I jumped into a 3-day market. And so they can be kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
You know, not that it
Absolutely.
wasn't great. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting. I mean, what has your experience been?
We did the same thing.
Yeah,
we
did pretty much the same,
Okay.
actually.
we did the SLC Punk Flea Market, and then we did Craft Lake City.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
I
we
think a
didn't-
2-week break in between.
Yeah, I was saying, and we only signed up for the first SLC Punk Flea Market because we had gotten accepted at Craft Lake City, and we were like, oh, this is our very first market. Maybe we should do a smaller one first to see how this goes.
Got it. To test
Because
the
we
waters
We
out.
just thought, oh, we'll just jump right in.
Yeah.
So then we did the smaller market first, and we were like, okay, we figured out some things that work. We have, we have some ideas on how to improve. We think we got this, but I was
many
exhausted.
overnight
yes.
Amazon orders to get like certain things where you're like, oh, we need this, we need and like get it all in before the next show.
Totally.
Yeah, but no, I was definitely exhausted after that first Craft Lake City. I was like, oh my goodness, like in a good kind of way, obviously, because it was very exciting. It was super fun, but you talk to so many people, and I'm very much an introvert, so yeah.
Same. I am an introvert too, so it's a little bit tough when you have kind of people coming up, and it's like I want to talk to them, but I don't want them to feel pressure because absolutely, please, it's totally fine if you don't buy something here, you know. And so that's also a hard thing for me. Is like there is no pressure at this booth. You can just come and hang out if you want. Because I brought my button maker and I had a table for button making if they wanted to at the Logan Art Festival.
Oh, very cool.
And so that was fun. People would just come and they would sit there and hang out and make buttons. There was an art teacher actually from one of the schools in Cache Valley who was there, and she's like, this is a really cool idea. And I'm like, you should get a button maker for your students. You know, I'm like constantly pushing the button maker on people. So
Yeah, we are constantly trying to figure out how to interact with people at shows more in an artistic way. And I think a button maker is a very cool way to like show that to people and like have them get their hands on, because we love screen printing, so we have all our guests screen print, and you guys can see social media of us screen printing with all
just
our
super
guests.
fun, by the way. It's super cool.
And so we love sharing that, and like if we could do similar things like that at shows, I mean, I can't bring a screen printer and all,
That would be a little difficult,
but
but
something of that nature. And like I always love seeing other artists that have interactive booths. There's a I forget the press person that's usually at Craft Lake City, but she's always
Hex Press.
I think
Something
that's
like
it.
that.
She's always rolling her ink pads with t-shirts, and like you can pick your t-shirt, you can pick your
Oh,
design,
you can
bring in
and
your own
you
shirt.
can bring in your own shirt, and then she's printing it right there for you. And it's so cool to just see that process, because I love the process of all these different artists. So an interactive thing like that's super cool.
Yeah, I love that idea of having
Yeah.
the button maker there for people to use. That's awesome.
What has
Thanks.
been your, I guess, like best moment of doing something like that at a show? Like, have you had interactions with people that have really kind of stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of people at the Logan Festival, and I mean, a couple things. So one person just kind of came and was just like, thanks for just like letting us chill here, you know? And I'm like, yes, this is a safe, fun space.
Yeah.
And so that like meant a lot to me, that they felt like they could just come to the booth and hang out. Another thing at the Mount Market, once somebody was just like, there are so many random things you've made buttons up, from like a papaya to like a Campbell's soup thing. And they're just like, I can literally look at any of these and think of somebody it would basically be good for. Yeah, so that was kind of fun for me as well.
That's a wonderful compliment. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get into that. And how do you like, what's your process to go, okay, this week I'm making papayas and this week I'm making a Forrest Gump thing? How do you go about picking and choosing and like letting those different styles just flow from you?
Honestly, it's all random. There is no like rhyme or reason to it. It's more of I'm going about my day and I'll see something while I'm working or I'm driving or somebody says something or I'm on social media and a Campbell's soup thing comes up. I'm like, oh, Campbell's soup, that's cool. So I keep like this running list of ideas on my phone. And whenever I see something, I'm like, oh, adding that to the list, basically. So I wish there was more of a pattern to it, but it is random.
Because I noticed there, like on your social, there was like a food like series.
Yes.
So it's like, was it just like you were really hungry that week? And like, I'm just making food all week.
No. So like, I've been doing this now since kind of the start of the pandemic. So however many years that is, I've lost track and can't do math anyway. So however long, 2 or 3 years, whatever that is. So when I did those series, it was just kind of like, okay, I've made for these 2 or 3 years all of these different food things. So let's pull these together and kind of put them all together and make a series. Or like one of my favorite series is the art. So like the Van Gogh Starry Night one. That's one that I really enjoyed working on and kind of doing, taking an artist's art and then kind of putting my own touch on it. So they were made at random times and then kind of put together at one time.
Yeah, smart. Now, I don't know if you asked this already, but how long does it take you to make an individual button?
I was just thinking, get out of my head. I was just going to ask that question.
We've been together too long.
So it really depends on like the button. I have this really cool person and friend that I met on Instagram. Her name's Stan, and she actually reached out to me and said, I have this wall of this leg picture and they're Converse and like some jeans, and she has a wall where she has all sorts of different like arts of that picture, and she's like, I found you, do you think you could make this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like the first kind of commissioned thing somebody asked me to do, and I'm like, I do not want to mess this up, like I don't know if I can do this, but I just said, I'll try. And so I made that little leg picture of hers and gave it to her. And that took a long time. It was probably like 2.5 hours. And then another one, my friend was doing a map for a research project and said, hey, I want to give this to like my advisor. Can you make this map out of flowers? And so that one took probably 3 hours, and then it got lost in the mail and then it got ruined. It was in the mail. Thank you, USPS. No, I'm kidding. You can cut that out. But if you want. I sent it like December 1st, and they're like, yeah, it'll take me like 3 or 4 days. 2.5 months later, it finally made it there, and it was just shredded. Like there was they were all over, and I'm like, it took me like 3 hours to do, so that was devastating. So they can depend. Yeah.
That is heartbreaking, though.
Yes. It definitely is, but it gets to the question I have next is, are all of the buttons one-offs?
I don't ever make the same button twice.
Okay.
Yeah, so somebody like wanted a Hello Kitty one, and so I didn't do the same image. I did a different image, and then Frida Kahlo I've made twice, but it's been a different image.
Style,
but everything else has always been just one. So I won't make them again.
Oh man,
that's exciting.
Yeah, because I was like, I was looking through everything you have. I'm like, is there multiples of these? I can't, like, if someone bought this one, that's it. It's gone.
I mean,
it's theirs.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody actually, you talked about Homer's hot sauce, and so when we were booth mates at the Avenues Fair, he wanted the Melonia, whatever it's called. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
It sounds so familiar.
He showed it to me because he actually just came right from the show.
Oh, cool.
And did the podcast episode with us.
Got
he
it.
had it with him.
Okay, very cool. Thank you, Homer. No, so it is like it has like a little keyboard, and it's shaped like this.
Oh, okay,
and then it has the tube that you can put in your mouth, and then you play it basically. And so somebody saw that, and they reached out to me and said, my aunt really wants one of these. Will you make it again? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I can't. I won't make it again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel bad, but it's kind of like, I think that's one of the cool things about it is that it's like you have the only one.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
That is very cool, and it's cool to hear that you're staying very true to, like, okay, no, I'm not making an exception. It's just, it is what it is. Different style, different design. That's a total different button, but it's once that one's done, it's in the ethos. That's
yes,
it.
it's
That's
done.
the only one.
It's out there in the world. So, yeah.
So do you get a lot of commissions then?
I'll have people reach out to me, and I usually just say, like, I don't know if I can do it. Let me try it first. And then I'll send you a picture. And if you actually like it, like if it's what you're thinking, then, we can talk about it. But again, it's not as much of a business for me. It's more about having kind of fun with it. So if they come up with an idea, I'm like, let me see if I can do it. So maybe I'll have like one a month. It's not a huge thing for me, which is fine because it always makes me nervous. Somebody has probably something super specific in their mind that they're looking for. Do you guys do commissions?
Yeah, so I do like costume and cosplay, like sewing commissions.
Okay.
But I totally get that because I know some people will not take commissions because same thing. It can be difficult to work with people when they have something very specific in mind, and you want to like do that justice. So yeah, I like doing commissions. I think it's fun. People can often come up with a lot of really fun ideas, and I have fun doing it. But it is definitely nerve-wracking. And as Derek says, I don't charge enough because I'm like, no, it's not good enough to like charge too much. And he's like, but you spend hours on it. I'm like, I know because I want it to be perfect.
I know that is the hard thing. Is sometimes their ideas and like this is gonna take me a long time to do. And I definitely never charge enough. But again, it's okay because it's less about that and more about just kind of me having fun and more of me having something to kind of post on Instagram is really why I do some of what I do. So
yeah, there is a side of things where like just doing the art to do the art, and sometimes getting a third party like requests kind of, I would have never thought of something like that. And it kind of like turns another switch on, and like you can go, I'll go this direction with something, and that one piece you might do for them, and it might not like be a huge like return, but it is okay. I've got these other ideas down the same avenue potentially that kind of open up stuff and everything.
Yeah, totally.
So that's always a fun avenue to kind of take. And commissions, like Chrissy says, it's a different thing than we're necessarily thinking about. And it opens up, okay, let's try something a little new and see where it goes. When it comes to the first show, what was that final like push to say I'm gonna do this? Besides that hundreds of buttons you had.
Besides you're like, what the heck am I gonna do with all this?
It was what Rebecca made had all these ornaments that she made, and she goes, well, I need to figure out a way to get rid of all these ornaments.
Yes.
Guess I start selling them.
Yeah.
Yes. Honestly, it was truly more of that, but also like growing up, I had always wanted to be at a farmer's market, like do something at a farmer's market because I love that feel. I love the summer kind of festival thing. I love being there, and I never knew what to do. My sister-in-law, so our last name is Buttars, and my dad's actually a dairy farmer, and so butter anyway, but they were talking about, making butter or making like peanut butter with the little blender they have, and you can make. So it was like Butters butter.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a great idea. Maybe I could do that if they don't do it, because I just wanted to be there. And so being like 30 years old now and being like, I have some free time, on the weekends, I might as well just try it. Why not? I have all this stuff that I need to get rid of because I've got nowhere to put it. Now I have actually a setup at my house. My mom, she sewed some hanging things for me. I actually did it because I had applied to show my art at the library, the Salt Lake Library, and got accepted for the marmalade branch. Okay. And I was like, now that I'm accepted, how am I going to actually display this stuff? So my mom sewed me some kind of these hanging things that are on a dowel and could hang up. And so I actually now have a place to put them in my house. They all hang up there. But yeah.
How many buttons have you kept for yourself and that you don't want to sell because they're just that special? And like, do they all fit on that hanging wall?
Yes. So that is such a good question. I was actually thinking about that on my way here. I was like, there have been some that I've like fallen in love with and be like, I'm not going to sell this one. But then of course, that's always the one that someone reaches out to me and is like, is this one for sale? And I'm like, oh, I just happened. I actually made like the national parks like logo. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not getting rid of this one because it took me forever to cut out like national parks, those tiny little letters. It took forever. And I'm like, I'm not selling this one. And of course, that's the one. It's like 2 different people wanted them. One of them was my cousin. And I'm
it's
like,
a bidding war.
okay, all right, here we go. Yes, you can have it. So I actually haven't really kept any necessarily for myself because it actually gives me more joy that somebody's going to get joy out of it than it would me just kind of keeping it around.
Yeah.
So
I have a blacksmith buddy who, like, he always gets asked, like, what's your favorite knife that you keep? Because I can't keep any knives. Like, all the knives I make, I have it for like a week maybe. He carries it on it and then he sells it because he's like, oh, I'll make another one. Someone asked if that was available. It's like, I made this really cool one and then, oh, okay, fine. I'll sell it and I'll make another one.
I know. Yeah, there were definitely some like the painter, help me out here, Bob
Ross.
Bob Ross, thank you. Bob Ross, that one was really hard for me because I loved that one. And then Bob's Burgers was also hard for me because it was one of my kind of most popular ones, I guess you could say, on Instagram, and I loved that one. So that one was hard for me, but it's only hard for like a second and then it's okay.
Yeah.
I have a picture of it. So
for your grandmother, you have a framed piece that you made for your mom.
yes.
There's character in that piece. How big is that piece? It's kind of hard to tell scale online, but
I wish I could remember the exact dimensions, but it's like
so
like
it is
a portrait.
one of your bigger pieces then.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
What is very impressive is you show the picture of your grandmother at the end of the slide on the social, but you can see the details, you can see the characteristics, you can see all that. How like, my brain doesn't work that way. I don't see the shapes of everything the way you're seeing it. How does that process work? How does that kind of break down for you when you go to create something like your grandmother?
Yeah, so I'll have like a printed picture of it. And then I kind of go to my little workstation and say, okay, these are the colors that I want. And I'll go through and I'll pick everything so I have it picked out. And then I honestly don't know. I think my mind just kind of says, okay, so here's the hair. Here's what I'm going to do for this. And I just kind of start like one element at a time. And sometimes it's kind of fun because if an element has like, texture you can see in the picture, I usually can find a leaf or something that actually matches that. I mean, it's been years of me collecting stuff, so you should see that table. It's wild. But I'll just pick like an element at a time and then kind of put it together. But what's interesting about that is I never knew my either grandfather on either side. And so I actually tried to do one of my grandfather and it just didn't look right. And so part of me is like, do I kind of almost need to know that person to add that character into it because I just couldn't get it right. And so it was interesting because my grandma June, I think, is the one that you were looking at. It just kind of came together because I actually knew her growing up. So I think that helped.
It helped kind of that like kind of drive and
kind
like,
of pull from memory as well as
Yes.
the photo that you had for
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah.
that's very interesting. Have you thought about more bigger pieces and like that potential, like of like what you would potentially do with that?
Yeah, I definitely would be up to that. It is harder because the face, like, it needs to be small enough, or whatever I'm doing needs to be small enough that I can do it with like one leaf. Because as soon as you start to add multiple things, it adds different kind of textures and shading. So that's the hard part is like it would need to be small enough to be able to fit the leaves or whatever it is that I have.
Okay.
So yeah, it's harder than you'd think to do a bigger piece.
Yeah, so the smaller pieces, although they're time consuming, they are technically easier than bigger pieces.
I would say, yeah, just to get like the colors and the shading and everything right, I think they're easier.
So I'm going to ask a funny question. How much leaves and foliage do you get in your washer dryer from leaving in your pockets?
I haven't ever done that.
Oh, really?
No, because it's like my husband, his name's Tony, all the time will be somewhere. We were just in Arizona this weekend and he found some really pretty flowers and he like puts them in his pocket, and then later the day he's like, oh, I got you these flowers. And I'm like, babe, we've talked about this multiple times. Like, you can't just put them in your pocket or a bag. They don't turn out good. It has to go immediately into a book, And so I appreciate the effort, but it just doesn't quite work out. So I don't ever leave them, but I have accidentally left a button of my grandma. It was Grandma June. The beautiful button that I did. I left it in my pocket because I took it from my mom's house to put in the library display.
Yeah.
And I forgot. And I washed it. And so like on the paper on the around it, there's like water marks. And I'm like, oh no, my life is over.
So sad.
Have you guys ever ruined something like on accident or done something you're like, my life is over?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I leave stuff in my pockets all the time, but never anything important, thankfully.
That's good.
I don't think I've ever been in this situation where like, oh, my life is over with like
Okay,
ruining
that's
something.
a little dramatic. I get that. This is a little too dramatic.
It is. I find like comfort in mistakes, I guess, because it's like, okay, I'm gonna try something, and like Christy always gives me crap because I cut once and measure, like I
measure
once,
twice, cut once.
Yeah,
and he's
but
just
I
like,
usually-
I'm just gonna start cutting.
Yeah,
and I'm
let's
like,
just see what happens.
"Okay,
And,
but
and
if you measure, then you don't end up having to do it 3 times in a row.
Yes, but it takes longer,
But,
you
I
know,
mean,
and it's not as fun.
it has more characteristics to it.
No,
and,
I get
I
it.
will say one of the biggest mistakes I sometimes make, and it always makes me nervous every time when I like do that first cut into fabric, especially when I'm working on like a commission or something. And so there have been times where I've like, you know, messed up a cut or cut something wrong or like got my measurements wrong, and then I'm like, shoot, now I have to figure out how to fix this or go buy more fabric or like, yeah, no, that's always the worst feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
But it's always been, I don't know, I've never really had the, like, I've never broken something that bad that I couldn't like potentially fix or like replace or repair or
Yes.
some way. So,
Yeah.
But like, also, I don't think any of the pieces I've done have taken like 3 hours to do in that sense. Like, because if I'm doing a digital piece, like it's saved digitally in multiple places. Like, I guess the only thing I could compare to is potentially having like a timeline on an edit go bad on us and not hitting save and have to go back and edit something.
Re-edit something that
Like,
you spent like hours editing.
Hours editing. I guess
No,
that
that
would
is
be
for sure
the-
equivalent or
the-
even worse. That's
yeah.
rough.
Because then it's like, oh, I just spent all that time and I got to do it. And it's never the same. And you felt
Yes.
so good about that edit.
Yes.
And you're like, yeah, the timing was right. And then
Perfect.
the computer crashes and you forgot to hit Control S. And now you've got to go back to the start again.
Yeah, and it's like, I think part of it too is, yes, that it takes time, but it's like when you're so close, and when I almost get done with a piece, I'm always like, yes, you know, it feels so good because I'm like, I'm so proud of it and it's so cool. And so to have something like you where it's like you're so close to being done and then you lose it all, it's almost like you could see the light at the end of the tunnel and then it was gone, you know?
It
And
just
that's
blinked
rough.
out.
Yes, that is so rough and devastating.
Yeah. I want to get into tips for people who are watching or listening and they think, hey, I want to get into foraging like supplies and potentially look into maybe a similar thing you're doing or in something using forage supplies. Like, what are some of those tips that you can have that you've experienced that you can give some of the viewers?
Sure. So I would just say that it doesn't need to be complicated. Like, you do not need to buy, and if you want to, I mean, that's great. I don't have like flower presses. I don't have anything. It's like I went home and books that my mom bought at the Lewiston Library for like 50 cents that she's not using anymore. I'm like, Mom, I'm taking this book, and I'll take it. And I have like 20 of them. Or at work one time, they were getting rid of all of these old school audiology books that nobody wanted about tinnitus and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'll take them, you know? And so you can get any book out there as long as the pages aren't really glossy, because when you do that, then it doesn't dry as well. And just go out. I mean, I don't ever take flowers from people's yards or anything like that. Like, I draw the line there, but like going, especially in the fall time, it's like perfect. You can just go on the side of the street and take them. I usually leave kind of a couple of pages in the middle of them so they have more room to dry, but we're really lucky here in Utah because it is such a dry climate that they usually dry without kind of any mold type of issue. So I would say you don't need money, you don't need a big investment, just go to a book and take a walk.
Yeah, the thrift store, you can find plenty of big old books
Yes.
for dirt cheap.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so $1, $2 for
100%.
a big book. And then, yeah, if there's trails by your house, just go walk and see what you find.
Yeah.
What are you looking for when you are out hiking, out in the wilderness, out just collecting? What is the thing that catches your eye that you're like, I gotta have that and put that.
Sometimes it's just like if it's a cool color, or if it, it's small and I know I'm going to be able to put it on a button, or if it's big and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be able to cut stuff out of that, And since I've been doing it long enough now, I'll know certain trees and things that I want, especially around fall time, because I've got to keep it for the winter. Like my mom's house, she has a tree that for whatever reason in fall, when the leaves fall, they go black. And it is not easy to find a lot of stuff in nature that is black. And so like last fall, all of my little nieces and nephews were over there and they love to go foraging with me. So they're out in the back. I'm like, get that one, get this one, this one. And they're like, what about this one? Perfect, And we're just putting them in books. And I had like 5 books full of these black leaves because it's like, I knew that I was going to need those. So after you do it for a while, you can kind of say, all right, these ones, they don't hold up very well. These ones do. This is the color I need. And then you can kind of start keeping that track of that in your mind.
And I don't know if I missed it, but do you finish, once you have a finished piece, do you like finish it with any sort of like sealer or anything like that to keep it?
No. So I do use a glue. We kind of talked about that when you were gone. I didn't used to use a glue, but when I was making the buttons, that Mylar piece, I would have it on perfectly. And then you'd put that off and the static clean would like make it go all over. So I use just like this organic glue that I think is better than like an Elmer's glue to not uncolor the leaves, and I'll put that on. And then for the buttons you have the Mylar piece over it. For the little frames I don't put anything special on top of it. So
when it comes to thrifting for us, finding supplies and stuff, like I have a project and I'm like, I need a red t-shirt or I need something. Do you have a project in mind when you go foraging and looking for that perfect leaf, or is it I found a leaf and then there's a project going to come from that?
That one. Second one.
The second one.
Yeah. If I was more organized and like didn't have my leaf table, then it would probably be like that. It'd be like, okay, I know I want this, so these are the colors that I need. But that's also hard for me because usually if I think of something, I'm super excited and I want to work on it right then. So the drying actually takes like 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that would be really hard for me with my personality being like, I really want to do this Mona Lisa, but I don't have that, So I just keep tons of stuff at any one time so I can do that. And when I'm out foraging, it's not usually for anything specific. It's just like, I know I need this color and I'm going to utilize this sometime in the future. I don't know what it's going to be, but yeah.
So I know you said the table's covered in leaves and all this stuff. Is there any other type of organization in the setup of like color coordinating?
No,
it's just
I wish there was. There's nothing. There's nothing. I'll send you a picture of it so you can see the mess it is. I think
post it on your social so everyone
okay,
can see.
Okay. I think Tony, my husband, he calls it like the rat's nest maybe because it's just like it's unbelievable. And then if any gust of wind happens to come in there, it's like they fall on the floor. And
but it is an interesting like. Cool, we started this without a kid and now we have a kid, and so we gotta figure out
which I think it's so cool that you guys are still like creating and doing everything you're doing, because I feel like if I had a child, it would be like, I'm not doing anything. Like I'm gonna get sleep in my bed when I can sleep. Like I'm not planning anything. So
there are days where it is okay, we're on the sofa watching TV like majority of the day, making lunch and dinner, and
sure.
It is what it is, but there is also, I think both of us have just been so creative before Juniper came along that we're like, hey, like I need 30 minutes to just like go do something with my hands, like
sure.
on a project of something. Same thing for Chrissy. We opened the shop back up within 2 weeks of like having Juniper.
Wow.
And it was like, let's see what comes in, and like I can handle her for the 30 minutes to an hour you'll need to go down and like take a break. And it kind of is that nice mental break of like, okay, I'm gonna work on this or create this. And it's been also like this morning I was up at 4:30 in the morning and it was Juniper got fed and then I was down here working on the computer. Just I'm like, I need to like create something like and just work through something. And then it's like, okay, get up, make breakfast, and then go to work kind of thing. And then we're here doing more.
Yeah. I asked her, I was like, so festivals, with Juniper, what's that going to look like? And she's like, yeah, we're going to try it out. And I'm like, how cool is that? Juniper can grow up in like this festival atmosphere. Yeah. I just think it's neat to be surrounded by art. And she has all of these different options that she can choose from.
The only thing we worry about is all the sharp options we have down here.
Well, this might not be baby proofed, but as soon as like she gets a little older and can understand, the world is her oyster in here, which is cool.
I heard Adam Savage talk about it. I think it was in his book, where his dad was an artist and had his workshop, and it was don't touch the razor blades, don't touch the razor. And it was Adam Savage had this idea. He needs the razor blade. The dad wasn't there. He used it, and the dad knew. He used it. Like nothing happened. I think if that's the way I remember the story right, but it was that moment where he's like, he earned his trust to like be in the workshop and like be able to use the tools and stuff. So we do look forward to sharing all of this with her, and hopefully she wants to like have fun and creative, and if not, hey, whatever she wants to pursue, we'll support any which way. But like my parents were very supportive of all the different stuff I did growing up. My Christy's in the same vein where it's like super supportive and what we pursued and what we wanted to create. Like I didn't know we would be here. Like that's the reality. We didn't know that this is where we're going to be. I didn't know I'd be with Christy for 19 years.
Yeah.
That is one of the things, but we have built what we've built because this is what we want to do. This is what we create, and having conversations with artists like you and hearing the same thing. It wasn't something that just like you thought it all out and it was I have leaves and I bought and like had this idea, and
yes,
you started making these very cool things and continue to pursue that avenue. Is there thoughts of stopping?
No. I mean, I luckily I work from home now because I switched my position with the same company like 6 or so months ago. And so I work from home, which I love because then when I'm done working, I can go down to the table and create. But it's usually on the weekend where I'm like, I really want to make stuff. And so even if nobody bought anything from me and it all collected dust, it's an outlet for me that I haven't felt like I've had before this.
Yeah.
So there are no thoughts of stopping. I just keep buying more little frames. I've got so many. I'm like, I need to stop buying these things. I need to stop buying button makers, but I just can't.
Well, I think I fall into the same trap. It's like I should probably stop buying some tools that we need, but then it's like, well, that tool's going to help me make this and
yes.
go down this rabbit hole and see. And I mean, we're constantly like hitting up the local thrift stores, the DIs, and like
perfect.
Going down aisles and like, oh, what could we make with that? We were at one the other day, and there was Chinese food takeout boxes in a wrapper, brand new pack, and I was like Christy was there. She was just in another part of the store, and I took a picture and I sent it to her. I'm like, what do you think? Should we get these? And then I found her and I'm like, look, should we get these? Should we? And she's like, I don't know. And then, but like both our wheels start turning and we both start like, maybe we could do this, or maybe we, and like, it's only $2. Should we get, okay, hold on. Let's, but like we have similar situations where I saw popcorn bags and I was like, okay, I think maybe Christy might not like these. Maybe she will. And then I get home. I'm like, I found these popcorn bags and I didn't get them. She goes, why didn't you get them? I have this. I'm like, I knew I should have got them.
So can we like rewind a little bit? Like, what were some of the ideas that you two were coming up with? Those like takeout boxes.
We didn't really. We were like, okay, can we use them for packaging, like for stuff? I was like, do I make a mystery sticker pack like that? Like we put 20 stickers in and just put it at shows, and it's this cool packaging that draws people in. Or do we like start figuring out some other way to use the material that's there for something? And it's just that you have the same, I think, mindset of like the leaves can go this way and then go, and like you see something out in the world and it inspires that creation and that process. And let me ask, how, when you see the idea and you write it in your notes, how long before you actually like take action and create that idea?
So it that also depends, because like when you look at my notes, sometimes there'll be something that's been in there for a year, and a lot of times it's like, I don't know if I can actually make that.
Yeah.
Like looking at this specific thing, like I just had Stranger Things written down, and it's like, well, what from Stranger Things? Like, what am I supposed to
just wrote
do? What am I
Stranger
like? What am I supposed to do with this? Or I'll see something and I just write myself notes and I'll look at it later. I'm like, I don't even remember. Like, what the heck does that even
I've
mean?
done that so many times.
Okay, so it's not just me.
It's not just you.
So-
I have my notes on my phone, and like I'll be like, oh, I want to draw this, and like I will have some of those things where like my talent is not quite there yet, and I will come back to it, and I just kind of I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I talked about this idea, and
Yes.
like go from that motion kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it'll be sometimes, is like it's been in there and I've maybe even tried it once and I failed miserably. I'm like, that looks so bad, you know. And I joked with Tony that I should create like a bloopers kind of one where it's like, oh, like I have a Thomas the Tank Engine that I made maybe like a month or so ago, and it looks so bad. I'll post it sometime on Instagram, but it looks like kind of derpy, like just kind of, it just doesn't look good, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Sometimes those are some like people's favorite things.
and it could be, but I look at it and I'm like, oh man, this is bad. Or I made a Pillsbury crescent roll one, and I'll usually, my gauge is usually asking Tony, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And if he immediately starts laughing, then I know that maybe it's
Good or bad?
maybe not great.
Okay.
But sometimes he'll be like, oh man, that's really cool, you know, and then I know, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But sometimes I like him and he doesn't. So, I mean, it's all over the board. But to answer your question, they can stay on there for a really long time, because I think the point is like, maybe I'm just not there yet, kind of
Yeah.
like what you said.
Yeah, it's. I think Christy has a list of projects, ideas that she wants to sow, and it's, do I know the skill set to do it yet?
Sure.
Or do I have the dedicated week, 2 weeks to practice and learn and take that skill? It's the same thing. Any of my drawing designs, I listen to so much music, and that's where I find a lot of inspiration from. And sometimes it's a lyric will hit me, and I'm like just right at the right moment. I've heard the song 100 times, but
Sure.
that lyric hits at that moment. I'm like, oh, write that down. I think I've got some idea for that. But then I'll like let it kind of like sit for a little bit, and then like maybe I don't want to go that route with it. Maybe I want to take a different, and then yeah, I'll throw Sketch into Procreate and see what happens. And yeah, I have the same. It's like, oh, that is awful. What did I do? Like that? Nah. And then, but I leave it there, because then I it's like that like step process of like, okay, I had this idea, I tried the idea, that was garbage, and like, okay, come back a month later and then I redo it. And there's plenty of things where I've done, and then it's come back, I'm like, oh, I just wasn't in the right mindset at that moment, like
Yeah.
when I was choosing my colors or choosing the like my line work that I was doing on something. But it is, I think, a process for any creative, that like it's not always going to be Van Gogh, Picasso piece.
And it's not always just going to come out, right? I think
Yeah.
the mindset thing that you bring up is a great point, because it's like sometimes I'll go sit down and I'm like, I need to make stuff, you know, and then I'm just like, I'm just not into this right now.
Kind of forcing
like,
it, and you're like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I just don't want to do it, and so then I don't. And usually, like an hour later, then it'll be like, okay, now I want to. But I think you have to be in that, and to force yourself, it takes the fun out of it. And I never want to get to that point.
You have given some really good knowledge, really good insight. The conversation, we could probably do this for a whole nother hour. I love when we get into very cool, out there ideas with art, because it's not something we're seeing everywhere. It's your own style. You really created your own voice for it. For people listening, viewers, or anybody still on the podcast with us, is there a piece of advice to pursue what that creative passion is that you might have for them?
I mean, I think Nike said it best when they said, just do it, you know? I think if you have an idea and you want to do it, make time to do it, because we all only have, you know, a limited amount of time, and we might as well do something that we want to, that we're passionate about, and something that makes us happy. And so if anybody feels like they want to do something like that, go out and do it. Don't be afraid. Just, you know, figure it out and have fun figuring it out in the process. So I know that's not like mind-blowing revelation, but like literally just take the step and do it.
It is the advice I think almost everybody like says on here, is just do it. And I think the key takeaway from what you just said is make sure you're happy with what you're doing. don't force it. Like, be genuine in what you're doing, and I think it's a natural happiness comes from that, finding that pursuit of it.
And it might take you in avenues you don't even expect. I already have mentioned that I'm an audiologist and I work for a hearing aid company. And each year there's a big conference. It's called the American Academy of Audiology. And before this conference, we had something called summer camp where we had college students kind of come in and talk to them about audiology. And I was just like, hey, I think they would like to make buttons. And everyone's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I think it'd be a cool thing. We got 50 people. I've got a button maker. I'll bring it. I'll get some stickers. We can put the Oticon, which is the company I work for. We can put that logo on there. So it's kind of like fun, and they can make whatever they want with that logo. And they're like, okay, sure. And so I brought my button maker. They didn't even know what to expect. They set up a table for me, and I had people at my little booth, like 3 hours, just full of people making buttons. And I think that's the cool part about buttons specifically, is that people just have fun doing it. Adults, women, children, men, whoever it is, just have fun. And they actually, bringing back the conference thing, they actually decided to do it at this conference. I mean, it is a very professional audiology. People are wearing business clothes, and we have a booth where they can come and make buttons. And people have come and just spent a ton of time at the booth saying, like, this is just fun to have this creative outlet. And so I think having that creative outlet and like being able to do something like that is also fun and something that you would maybe not expect to happen.
So guys, go get a button machine.
Get a button maker.
Get a button maker.
Just do it.
Thank you so much for joining us here on the episode and sharing your passion and everything you're doing. Where can people go find you? I know we threw it out already, but where can they go find what you're making and support what you're doing? Buttars_buttons, and Buttars is Buttars. And I do actually have a website. It's buttersbuttons.com. And yeah, you can check me out. Send a message to me on Instagram. I love it when people send me messages, have ideas. I would love any ideas that you have, because I need them. After having hundreds of ideas, I'm starting to run out. So guys, the buttons are one of a kind. You're not, like, if you see something and you want it, do not sit on it, because it will not be there. They're very awesome. They're very cool. The picture frames you're making are very awesome. We are stoked to see where everything goes for you in the future with everything you're doing. Thank you. Again, thank you for joining us on this episode. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a blast. Awesome. Guys, like, comment, subscribe. Go buy a button maker. If you guys buy a button maker, leave it in the comments. Let us know you're making buttons out there. But guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Always Making. We will see you guys on the next one. Bye.